Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, May 3rd, 6 months and 4 days before the presidential election. President Biden is trailing Donald Trump by 3 points this morning, and also, more importantly, losing in all six battle crown states. So get those dual citizenship paperwork, get that dual citizenship paperwork going because you don't have much time. All right, I am joined as usual by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Ryan P. Cruz of the Santa Barbara Independent, Josh Molina of the Santa Barbara Talks podcast, and Newshawk, and Callie Fausey, staff writer for the Independent. Thank you all for being here. Callie, let's start with you because I think this story kind of got overshadowed. You have a piece about how rape crisis centers, domestic violence shelters, and child abuse programs are all really in a financial bind because there's a federal program that I had not heard of that's about $700 million short. Can you talk about what's going on there?
Yeah, so the Victims of Crime Act is the biggest funding source for a lot of these programs, and that includes in Santa Barbara County. So, like our North County Rape Crisis Center and Standing Together to End Sexual Assault or SESA, they both receive funding from the state, who receives funding from the Victims of Crime Act, or VOCA. And basically, Congress has cut that by, $700 million this year. So it's going to really ripple out across all of the states and end up in, layoffs. Some programs are going to have to cut programs or even close down because of this significant, funding shortage. And, they say Congress noted like insufficient funds in the Crime Victim Fund, which funds VOCA through fines and penalties from white collar crimes.
So there's not enough white collar crime. We have a white collar crime shortage that's downstream effects.
It's something about, and Elsa Granados from Stessa explained it to me, but it was I feel like it's mostly just conjecture about how the prosecutions have been going this year, like how they've been handling those, and just having not as big of payouts in those kinds of fines and penalties from these cases.
And there was a big demonstration, I guess, in Sacramento recently about this. Elsa's a great friend of the program. What did she say? How would this specifically manifest in terms of if their program does not get the money?
Yeah, so Stessa in particular would lose $288,000 off of their budget, which is a significant chunk. And they have savings to make it through a few months, but after that, like, they're going to need to possibly lay off people. They're not going to be able to handle as many crisis calls. So like these funds mainly fund like their hotline, their 24-hour hotline. They're not going to have as much staff staffing their 24-hour hotline. So those kinds of services are going to be more limited. They aren't going to be able to serve as many people. The wait list is going to get longer. They might have to lay off staff. It's going to be pretty bad.
All right. And I assume that they're redoubling their efforts at fundraising now from the Elio Montanari community. So if you're interested in that, don't miss Callie's piece on this. It's a really important issue that I think deserves more attention. All right. Ryan, I know you got one eye on the supervisors meeting. They're doing the rezones. Josh, you've been following this as well. So they did the rezones for North County last week, and this is for the South County, which is really some of these big projects we've been keeping an eye on. Ryan, you and Josh both have written about the Orchard project, which almost mysteriously kind of got pushed off the rezone list. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so I mean, going into this meeting, the South Coast meeting today, the recommendation is to leave them out of the rezones. Kind of Goleta council member James Kiriakou has kind of been vocal about his opposition about this and the gentrification of Old Town and how much of an impact this 1,200 units would have right on the edge of Old Town. But, going through that developer workshop, it seemed at the time that it had everything the county was asking. It had a preschool, it had a pharmacy, it had a few parks, it had affordability across, every level. But I think a few people in the county planning department, that they were a little too flexible in they didn't have everything together, and they were kind of asking the county, what do you want? And being, they didn't really have their own idea right away. I think that the version that's coming today is the 7th version that they finished. It's a local group. Stan Georgia, and that family's been there for, generations. I think he's the 4th generation, and his kids would be the 5th. And the Nelsons, they've built a couple projects in Goleta, and they still own those projects. And so I think there's a little bit of fear of, what will happen if they get a rezone. Will they stick to this affordability level? And I think that fear kind of left them out of the picture. But, anything can happen. They still can get the rezone. And of course, they have their builder's remedy application, which keeps the project alive, though they don't really want to go through that way because it's untested waters, and there hasn't been a project here in Santa Barbara County that's broken ground through the builder's remedy yet.
Yeah. And Josh, why is the Planning Commission against that project, but in favor of the outsized Glen Annie development that's being proposed?
Well, Ryan had mentioned that James Kiriakou is influential. He's well respected, and so he is representing Goleta, and he feels as though Old Town could become gentrified because you'd have Highway 217, and on one side you have residents and businesses and a community that has existed very well for a long time, and then you'd have a new community with a market and trails and all of these amenities. And so he's concerned that there's going to be a massive change in the whole feel of Goleta, because I think it's 1,200 units. So if there's 1,200 units, would it quadruple the number of people living there? I mean, that's a significant amount of thousands of people. And so the other part of that is Laura Capps is the 2nd district representative. And I think she's more outspoken about rezoning this ag land to build housing, because she's one who was initially critical of the housing element proposal, which said, hey, why don't you look at some of your own property? Look at some of the parking lots in the county-owned property. Why are we going to rezone San Marcos Growers, the Georgie property, which is the orchard, the golf course, Glen Annie? And so I think she's been pretty strongly in opposition to that as well, because that's her district. And the Glen Annie thing is Joan Hartman's district, and it's sort of a whole other animal there. It's very complicated. But why do they prefer this one over that one? And why they prefer Glen Annie over the orchard? I think it's largely because of this Old Town Goleta issue. And right now, I mean, it's avocados, and I think it's is it lemons, I think.
Lemons, yeah.
And so we have a lemon festival every year, right? Like lemon is part of the identity of Goleta. It's like we're going to pave over what's left of the lemon orchards, and I think that's part of it too, is like it's still a little bit of Goleta's identity.
Is there parking in the Glen Annie thing or not? Or how much?
I don't know. I'll say a couple things here. I met with the development team, Flowers and Associates. It's very early. They showed me a rendering with trails, where the housing is going to go, the single family, the workforce housing, and there's no parking on any of this. And they said that's to come. They're going to figure it out. And that goes to the whole issue, which is developers making these really flashy promises in their presentations. They're not getting approval on their actual projects. It's just a rezone. So it's like a first date, right? You say everything you can that's great about yourself. You make yourself look incredible, and then over time, the real you starts to come out. And we haven't seen the real you of any of these developments yet. And so who knows what the parking is going to be like at Glen Annie.
I have to say, Josh, my dating strategy was much different. I tried to put forth all of my weaknesses and see if anybody would take me with it.
That explains a lot, Jerry.
I know it does. It really does. But Callie, so one of the things in this Glen Annie thing, according to Gabe Escobedo on the school board at least, is some proposed space for workforce housing for the Santa Barbara Unified School District, which is one of what, 2 sites that they're looking at for that? What's the scope of that? How many units and where does that stand?
Yeah, so the Glen Annie like land donation, they still have to, get rezoned by the counties too, of course. But they're offering to donate about like 7 acres of land, which translates to about 200 units of housing, I think it was. Yeah, and it's a part of 2 or 3 of the proposed housing developments from the district's ad hoc housing committee. Right now they're going forward with the old Parma school site that was going to hold about, I think, like 47 units of housing. And they're looking at a few other places, including now Glen Annie. And Glen Annie actually is also offering to donate land to Habitat for Humanity as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, I do want to point out that we have a very loyal viewer, Karen Lovelace, who sent some documents, which I really haven't had time to dig into, really questioning how much the developers actually control of that land. So I think that that's another question mark. Josh, you talked to some people at DP about this workforce housing for the school district, and they're not crazy about the idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Hilda Maldonado, Superintendent Hilda Maldonado, it just gets better and better with her the more people I talk to. But I did a story, and I know Ryan has covered this too, and Callie, like the school district seemed in support of this because they're going to have potentially workforce housing for teachers. And Gabe Escobedo, he was very supportive of this. But apparently no one talked to anyone at DP, and no one talked to any of the teachers. Of course, they're in this massive fight right now with the Teachers Association and the administration, so they're probably not on the best of terms. But, it's such a weird thing because if you're around Dos Pueblos High School in the morning, in the afternoon, after school, if you live there, there's massive traffic there. Like it's not a joke. It's not like if you ride your bike and live in a little apartment in downtown Santa Barbara and you walk downtown and your little life is within 3 square miles, good for you. Okay. But real people have to live in the real world, and they have kids and they have families and they have cars and vehicles and they have groceries and they have to go places. And if you try to get off the freeway between 4:30 and 6 at Stork and Glen Annie, you're looking one end of the sun, depending on the time of the year, and that off-ramp is backed up onto the road, onto the slow lane of Highway 101. That's going to only get worse. So these teachers are like, we live this, we have to deal with this. And by the way, you're saying you're going to build some housing for us, but no one's actually talked to us. And so the first time they had heard about it was in the media. And then they tried to meet with the developer, and the developer assured them everything would be fine. Ryan can probably explain this better than I can, because I know when I was typing it, I was slowing down and how do I explain this? Level of service, like there used to be a traffic analysis way of examining impacts based on housing, but because of the state mandate to build more housing, there's an exemption, I guess. So they're leaving it up to the planning department, which they're going to do whatever they need to do to get the project done with the developer to decide the impacts. And so I don't know how you're going to put more traffic at Stork and Glen Annie. That's not to say there should not be housing there. Of course, there should be something, but we're talking 800 to 1,000 units or whatever it is. It's a lot. And I find it offensive that the textbook planners, the developers, just keep saying, but this is housing for teachers. And then I've talked to teachers who are like, no, this is not, no one's talked to us, and we're more concerned about the traffic. They're also concerned about equity. Like if you buy a house, you raise as an equity, but can they get value out of the house? So there's lots of questions about that. So my story today was just basically them saying, hey, nobody talked to us. And if you think we're in support of this, you might want to ask us first.
Yeah, and Ryan, I know you have some personal experience with the traffic in that area. And
Yeah, I grew up around there. I went to Dos Pueblos. My mom still lives out there, right past Dos Pueblos on Cathedral Oaks, and it's a mess out there. Just like Josh says, if you need to get off the freeway at 9 a.m. or at 3 to 4, it's you can't even get off the freeway to get to Stork and Glen Annie. So I don't know what level of traffic mitigation can be done because there's not really a back route. You can go down Cathedral Oaks, but that's a one lane on either side. Like Josh said, it's kind of this climate we're in, and this need for affordable housing that's pushing this, and then this pressure from the state that we need to meet these numbers. It's really accelerating this process that normally would, it seemed would take more thought and more due diligence.
yeah, and also, let's be blunt, most of the housing is market rate housing anyway. And
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest thing we see over the next 8 years. What type of housing and what type of renters and homeowners come to live in these places, and how that changes the demographics. And that's going to be a big impact on the city going forward.
Callie, is Mary Ann sponsoring a big workforce housing program for the employees of the Independent, or is that's yet to come?
Gosh, I wish.
Sleep in the newsroom.
Yeah, you guys ought to get together on that. All right. I guess the city council approved the new site for the farmers market this week, but not unanimously. And there seems to be some serious concern about emergency services vehicles there. Josh, why don't you take that one first, then Ryan chime in.
Well, I was totally caught off guard. I mean, I thought it was going to be a meeting where they're going to
I
say,
thought it was a done deal.
yeah, I mean, they did it,
It is.
but I didn't know that there was this conflict with the fire department until I watched the meeting. And it's really odd. The fire marshal said at the city council, we do not like the relocation of the farmers market to the 900 and 1,000 blocks of State Street, and then the 0 and 0 on both sides of Korea, west and east side, because it's going to slow us down if we have to respond to a fire emergency, because Fire Station 1, the main station, is just around the corner on Chapala, right? So I'm like, wow, I had no clue that this was happening. They told us to the council, and the council still approved the relocation of the farmers market to this spot. So it was this clash between.
Was that the first we heard about the fire
The
department?
first I heard of it, I guess I could have done some pre-recording, but it's the first time at a public meeting. It
Yeah,
is
that's what I
for
mean.
sure.
I mean,
Well, the fire marshal mentioned that, a lot of the planning had been, I mean, it's been going on since 2019. So a lot of the planning of the dozen sites had been before he was on. So I think that was part of it. And anybody who's been downtown knows that, you get off the freeway, Carrillo and State is one of the main, intersections. You cross over from the east side to the west side or back and forth. And that being blocked off on a Saturday, that does raise some eyebrows. And, having that blocked off all the way Carrillo from Anacapa to Chapala and on State Street for those 2 blocks too, that, it's a great place for the farmers market. And I'm sure, that's a great place because of it's really central location, and it has a lot of parking lots nearby, but that fire station is right there. And if you imagine trying to pull a fire truck out of there, it's really hard to make a left turn because people don't keep that area clear like they're supposed to. It's a very busy intersection right by Ralph's. And then they're going to have to turn right, and to turn right, now they have to make another right to get onto Chapala, and it's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Did anybody vote against it? I guess Randy did.
Randy and Alejandra both voted against it. They said they couldn't support it due to the public safety's concerns. There was a caveat that, according to the license agreement, if there's an incident where where fire department and police both agree that it's a public safety concern, they can revoke that license in one incident, which, that rose some eyebrows too. It only takes one incident of this not working out for this to get revoked.
Wow. Okay. And Josh, along the way, the council also got their monthly opportunity to squabble about State Street. And so I was confused because Kristen now is Kristen Snedden is saying we want one block. She wants one block for what? Pedestrians only?
Yeah,
She's been
just
listening to
try
me
it out.
complain. Huh?
What's that?
She must have been listening to me complain all these months.
Yes, I think she may have mentioned that. She alluded to, those in the media. No,
No, what
so
so what I didn't understand what
there's
she
this
asking.
there's this debate over the 1300 block, which is, I guess, right in front of the Arlington and Carlitos, and there's a couple parklets, a couple restaurants there. And so right now there's like head first in parking. And so they're trying to figure out how to make this more functional. And so they tried to do it a few months ago. They had to come back, and now they were coming up with a plan. And so it's complicated. And so they can't actually, it's weird. They gave the power to the city administrator to decide operationally what State Street should look like. And the idea is safety first. So the council can't actually direct them unless they change this whole ordinance. So they just gave feedback. And Kristen Snedden's feedback was, she would like to see not the 1300 block, but a different block, just be like a pilot program that says no bikes, people, just people walking in the street, people of all generations can enjoy the public space. And she feels like that's what's lost in this whole State Street promenade. And to your point, Jerry, Eric Friedman said, this is what I was talking about before. I wanted to make 3 blocks of this. And you said no. And now Kristen is maybe coming around. The e-bike thing, I feel like it's almost universal now with people feeling as though it's a problem.
Well,
Even if they want State Street close to cars, they still acknowledge that e-bikes are too fast.
Yeah, well, Nick's not here, so we don't have our usual throaty defense of the e-bike revolution. All right, a couple of things real quick. Callie, you had a bunch of great stuff for Earth Day, but I was most interested in this lobster trap coalition or anti-lobster trap coalition. Well, talk about that. What was that about?
I thought that was really cool too. I don't think it's often that you hear about, commercial fishermen and environmental groups, working together hand in hand and doing something like this. But yeah, so Santa Barbara commercial fishermen and the Channel Keeper and Tidy Seas all worked together. I think it was like 2 weekends ago to clean up all of the lobster traps between I think it was More Mesa and Goleta Beach. They picked up over like 50 lobster traps, like 6,000 pounds worth of trash. And yeah, it was just a really cool effort.
Those things get really buried too. I mean, they're like under rocks, and then there's weird stuff sticking out. I mean, if you're walking the beach, it's not a good look at all. So that was,
each one are like 70 pounds.
yeah. Did you get a field trip out of it? Did you get to go pick up lobster traps or not?
No,
Oh,
maybe next time.
no field trip this year. All right. And then Ryan, you had the first frontline report on the Airbnb strike force, soon to be a major Hollywood movie. I guess we got all these former cops going out and rousting people in their homes who are renting out apartments and stuff. Sound like they brought in a lot of money, huh?
Yeah, in its first year, it brought in $595,000, and that was only from 40 properties. Now, of course, those first 40 properties were probably the worst, offenders, and they basically went and they put together a team of old retired special investigators, and they were a pretty crack team and really did it efficiently. Only spent $99,000 of their allotted $1 million. So
first.
Yeah, right. And so it is one of these programs that you see it work so far in its first year. Now, I don't think that money is going to come in at that rate for the rest, because it's a big problem. They found another 1,150 Airbnbs and short-term rentals that are still out there. And I mean, you just go on Airbnb or Vrbo right now, you can see how many are out there, but it's really hard to find which ones are illegally, you know, which ones can be pursued and they can get property back taxes on and they can get some money out of it and actually get them to be in line. And for the most part, they want them to get back in line if they can, if they're in a location that can be a legal Airbnb, they want it to just go above board. Now, there's going to be a lot that they find that aren't legal and just can't be operating. And we're going to see what happens with those. And if those get turned into regular rentals or if they just stay as second homes, because some of those are just second homes.
Yeah, well, there's the flaw in the whole program is that absolutely zero of them are going to get turned into long-term rentals, which was one of the things. And you know, so they get the money now, but now you can't operate, so we're not going to get any more money.
Yeah, I think the idea is hopefully to use that money towards, you know, building more housing. But like you said, it's really hard to track if these houses are going to become rentals or, you know, you can't force them to become rentals. You can't force a property owner to do that with the property.
All right. And then Josh, I want to take note of your new podcast with Suzanne Cohn, who I guess is the president of Dem Women, huh? And
Yeah.
of course you had Daraka Larimore Hall, former county chair, on a couple weeks ago, and he had a vicious personal attack on the Dem Women. And well, how did Suzanne respond?
She's classy. Yeah, very classy. She said that we do real work. We do serious work. Well, let me just back up. You know, Dem Women endorsed let me back up again. Santa Barbara County Democratic Women, they did not make an endorsement in the first district. And this was sort of surprising because it was sort of assumed they should endorse Das Williams because he's he was the party favorite. And so they didn't endorse Roy Lee. And so in my Draka interview, I talked to him about that. And he really said, you know, Dem Women, they never identified a policy disagreement with Das Williams. And maybe by just like having this like undefined criticism of him, maybe they handed the race to Roy Lee, right? So that was his whole thing. And then he went on to say that they were a club, they don't meet but once a year, they self-appoint the board, and he was dismissive of them. And so Suzanne Cohen said, you're wrong. You don't understand what we do. We meet, we have events all year, we raise money, we take stances on national issues, and we devote resources to candidates we support. And we felt as though we could not support either of those candidates. And she said the reason Das Williams lost was cannabis, and that he lost every precinct in Carpinteria, and that's why a lot of people at Dem Women were unhappy with him, among other complaints. But there's your policy reason, Draka. Like that's basically what.
Oh no,
she said.
but according to Das, cannabis was absolutely not an issue. You know?
But what I really liked about the podcast though was that she outlined the role of Democratic women and their role in elections and endorsements and the work they do. And the bigger story here is they're sort of wresting some of the power from the Democratic Central Committee, and candidates who aren't necessarily finding a home with the Das wing of the party, which he has traditionally sort of masterminded, find a home with Dem Women, you know, and this is a problem, right? Like people want to say within the Dem party, you're not left enough, you're not progressive enough, you're not this enough. Well, there's a lot of different perspectives, and people can be multiple things at once. They don't have to be all one thing, like maybe some people on the Central Committee. The biggest thing about that podcast, though, was the Central Committee did not endorse in the 4th District between Krishna Flores and Bob Nelson. And that was a clear choice between a Republican and a Democrat. So at a time when the Central Committee is criticizing Dem Women for not endorsing Das Williams over Roy Lee, 2 pro-choice Democrats, by the way, the Central Committee just sat out this hugely important contest on the Board of Supervisors. And the reason why? Krishna Flores didn't ask for an interview. At least that's what Darcel Elliott told
until
me.
January, right? I thought.
And I was told she did ask several times, but asked too late. Very odd. Like if you're concerned about Democratic power, why wouldn't you endorse the Democrat? You know, so lots of stuff. It's about, there's more to the Democratic Party. There's more to being a Democrat than just whatever the Central Committee wants you to think. And it's a big deal because we're heading into these elections, and so
Yeah.
people are going to be vying for candidates. And I'm looking forward to the first district on the city council with Alejandro, Winnie Santa Maria, and Jet Black Merritt's. And I heard Cruz might be running as well.
Oh,
So
really? He's
that's
back.
going to be a fun one.
All right. Okay, Callie, so we're gonna see your ketamine story next week?
Yes. Very exciting.
Oh, she's not giving anything away about it. All right, we're looking for that. Ryan, what are you working on? Just housing, I guess, huh?
Housing, more of the city and, the usual stuff.
Right.
That's
Okay.
like he doesn't want to say.
Yeah, I don't want to give out too many
I
things.
All right, Ryan P. Cruz, Josh Molina, and Callie Fausey, thank you very much. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.